Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to share some things with y'all today. I'm going to share with you the word Nicolaitan, and I'm going to share with you the word liturgy, and I'm going to also hopefully explain some more things along with that. So we're going to be using the Keyword Study Bible, and we're going to be using the Word Study. One second. The Word Study Concordance. So we got the Hebrew Greek Keyword Study Bible and the Word Study Concordance. But what I'm going to do is I already took pictures of them and sent them to myself. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And actually, let me get out of here. I'm going to go to Nicolaitan first. So right here, you can see that it says the Greek number here is 3531, Nicolaitanes. So Nicolaitan, which would be an adherent of Nicholas, so Nikolaios. It means victorious over the people. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the way that the leaven of Herod, which is the desire to rule over and to conquer, and the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, which is the false doctrine. Now, the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees combined with the leaven of Herod, that's the mark of the beast, because putting stamps on religious decrees, like what happened in 325 with Constantine, and what happened in 1611 with King James and his church, and we know that we're outside the camp, we're outside of those things. So here we're actually speaking of the evil system and how that stands in antithesis to the actual called out of God, the people who are claimed by God and his ecclesia. So we're going to be toggling back and forth between those two ideas, but it's important to keep them separated. So the Nikolaos, which is the people who try to conquer over the laity and teach them to conquer as they do, like they'll say, we have won 3,000 people to Jesus, or we've baptized 3,000 people this year, and they'll brag about their money and their building and lifting up the people, lifting up the staff, and publishing more and more programs. So it just means victorious over the people, and we can see the word laos here, and that's we're going to find that that's one of the key words in liturgy, and you can see that it says here it's from Nike 3534, which means victorious, and 2994. And we're going to see that first part of like liturgy, the lit part comes from laos. So let's go ahead and go to the next one here. So I'm going to go ahead and click back to the front. As you can see, right here I have 13 pictures, and I just included Nicolaitan at the end to help y'all with, so to show y'all the meaning there. So here we see this word liturgeto, which is where we get our word liturgy. Let me go ahead and go to etymology.com to show you this connection here. So I have it saved in my shortcuts here, but you can see the web address right there. So I'll go ahead and just type in liturgy. And the ergy on that word, the URG, is the same as ergos, which is energy. That's where we get our word energy. And when we think of synergy, it's the way that God either works with people or the way that Satan works with people. Now, the business world, the church world, and the school world and all that, they promote synergy, but they're talking about moving money, moving product, whatever helps the business. So liturgy, the service of the Holy Eucharist. Oh, there we go. It's already talking about the sacrament. Amazing. And I've done a lot of work on the sacrament out here. When you think of sacrament, think of mystery, think of the the dogma, which is actually believing that in these legends and fables and just the imagination of man, things that are made up. So they actually think that they're being governed by God, when in fact they're being governed by the love of money and Satan. So it says the Holy Eucharist, that's exactly what that is. They believe through transubstantiation, when they lift up the cracker and they enunciate the words Hacus Corpus Eam Filii, that it becomes the literal body and blood of Christ. And when you eat the literal body and blood of someone, that's called cannibalism. Or when they believe that somehow they tap into the ability to control the Holy Ghost by dunking someone in water, or even if you could put God into a cracker and grape juice, you believe that you control God somehow, which is a delusion. And God said he'll turn them over to a strong delusion that they'll believe a lie. They believe that going through these seminaries and maybe through these monkish orders to become these priests and these different educated men, and they call it ordained, but only God can ordain somebody. Only God can educate us to the things that belong to him. And going through any ritual, as it says in Colossians 2, Christ blotted out the handwritings of rituals, and all four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all mentioned to the effect that we'll be baptized with Holy Ghost and with fire, and that the rituals are done away with. In Acts, some of that would be seemingly contradictive, but the fact is that they were still performing the Jewish rituals of making one proselyte. And Jesus said, once you make one proselyte and you make them do a confession of faith, bring them in, dunk them in water 2 weeks later, and then the third Sunday of every month eat a cracker and grape juice, you have made them twofold the child of hell, because they're now relying on man and his religion. Which brings us to this liturgy concept. They actually, the word liturgy, as we're going to find, and you can read through this right here. I'm not going to go through every single part of that because I don't feel that we have to. We're going to actually just look at the actual word here. Let me get back over here to the beginning. All right, so liturgeo, it says in Acts 13:2, as they ministered to the Lord. And as we've seen, and as I'll show you more of, let me go here. Okay, right here it tells you it's from 2992. Well, as I showed you from Nicolaitan, that is 2994. So if you do the math, you can see that 2994, 2992, those are coming from the same words. Let me click over here. Okay, so liturgos and 2041 is actually energy. So let me show you this real quick. So we're switching between here, between the Hebrew Greek Keyword Study Bible and the Word Study Concordance, as I said before. All right, so Laos 2992 here. Apparently a primary word, a people, in genitive, thus differing from 1218, which denotes one's own populace. People are polis. That polis is like when we say a metropolis, it means the mother of the people. Like when someone says a motherland. So a people, nation, tribe. That is the mass of any people. And not like demos, which would be limited to a community of free citizens. So just people. Specifically of the Jews as the people of God's choice, figuratively of Christians as God's spiritual Israel. Generally, the people that is the multitude, the public, either indefinitely or of a multitude collected in one place. Especially the common people, the populace, the inhabitants of any city or territory, e.g. Jerusalem of Galilee, as distinguished from magistrates. And that's how we get into the Nicolaitanes and the leaven of Herod, and the fact that Jason and them were persecuted in Acts for not worshiping Caesar. And we can find all through the Bible, just from one end to the other, and I've done videos on that showing that God is king. So magistrate comes from magus, which means wise man, and that would be like the king's counselors, the king. And all of that flies in the face of God, because God says, I am your king. So here it shows you some synonyms down here, and you can pause that and look that up. So that's laos. It just means people. And then Ergon is 2041. That's the second part of the word, as we saw over here. And I'll show you one more time. Let me get back over here. Okay, right here where I'm showing you with the mouse, it says 2992 and 2041. So when we came back over here, 2992 laos, that's the first part of the word. And now we're going to look at 2041. From a primary but obsolete, ergo, to work, toil, as an effort or occupation, by implication, an act, deed, doing, labor, work. That's what it's been translated to these. Noun from ergo, to work, work, performance, the result or object of employment, making or working. A labor, business, employment, something to be done, generally of the work which Jesus was sent to fulfill on earth, that which one has been called or ordained to accomplish. In the sense of undertaking, attempt, work, that is deed, act, action, something done, generally to work, to work a work, do a deed. Quoted from Habakkuk 1:5 are of the works of Jesus, miracles, mighty deeds. Okay, let me see. An action or deed as contrasted to logos, word, by implication in James 1:29, not a hearer, but a doer of the work or the deed. There you go. That's awesome. Not someone who goes and sits through a modern day concept of a liturgy and sits inactive in a pew, but a doer of the work. It's a nation of kings, as we've seen in Revelation chapter 1, Revelation chapter 5, kings and priests. 1 Peter chapter 2 says a royal priesthood, and it's speaking of the priesthood of all believers. Every single believer is supposed to be working, as it says in Romans 8:28, and there's a bit of a mistranslation there because it uses the word synergy, and it means God working with our works, as I've shown in other videos. So, of the works of men in reference to right and wrong as judged by the moral law, the precepts of the gospel. Generally, of good works with various adjectives. Of evil works with various adjectives. Of works of the law, meaning works required are conformable to the Mosaic moral law and required by this law. Of works of faith, meaning springing from faith, coming with faith. Let me see. Springing from faith combined with faith, actually. So work, that is the thing wrought, something made or created generally by men, such as an idol. Of the works of God, generally, also of works implying power and used for power or might, e.g. of God. In John 9:3, are of Satan in 1 John 3:8. And there we go. That's where this is where the rubber meets the road with the word ergos. It means, so liturgos would mean people serving God or people serving Satan, because your works are either coming from God or Satan. It can't be both. So here down at the bottom, it's going to show you some derivatives in these different forms, and I'll let you pause that and look at those. And then here's some synonyms, so I'll let you pause and look at those. And okay, so we're going to go back over here to liturgy now that we've actually looked at where that comes from. So it's mentioned in Acts 13:2 as they ministered to the Lord, so the people working to the Lord. Romans 15:25, their duty is also to work. The people work unto them in carnal things. Hebrews 10:11, every priest standeth daily with the people working. So you can see that it's not talking about a modern day liturgy, liturgia, as the days of his people working are the working. So for the administration of this service upon the sacrifice and service of and you can look up these contexts as well. So Philippians 2:30, to supply your lack of service toward me, he obtained a more excellent ministry, sprinkled with blood in all the vessels of the ministry. But this is where it's used. So are they not all ministering spirits? So liturgos, they are God's ministers attending, that I should be the minister of, and he that minister to my wants, and his minister a flame of fire, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle. So we could look these up for the context as well. All right, and here's the one from the Hebrew Greek keyword study Bible. So liturgeo, it says from 3011 to be a public servant, that is by analogy to perform religious or charitable functions, worship, obey, relieve. From liturgos, public servant, to perform a public service. In the New Testament, to minister, to service publicly in religious worship, e.g. the priests of the Old Testament, Christian teachers, by implication in a more private sense, to minister to anyone, to supply monetary aid, to minister voluntarily, to serve as a slave, or diakoneo, there you go, and it's showing you a synonym. So, and therefore to serve by compulsion, primarily to work for hire, but when it involves service to God, it is also part of worship. So sometimes you don't always have to agree with everything they say here. So public function as priest, liturgy, and we'll go on. From public functional publicly, and then from a derivative of 2992 and 2041, we looked that up. A public servant, that is a functionary in the temple or gospel, a worshiper or benefactor. So, you know, obviously oftentimes they'll try to put their doctrinal spin on it depending on what religion they're from. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these, since we're saying that it just means a worker who's either working for Satan or working for God. So we'll look at this, which would be like the verb form with the eo on there. Acts 13:2. So we're going to go to Blue Letter Bible. So Acts 13:2. As they ministered to the Lord and fasted, the Holy Ghost said, separate me, Barnabas and Saul, for the work whereunto I have called them. So here it's people who are working for the Lord. All right, let me go ahead and click back. I just hit Alt-Tab to do that. So Romans 15:27. Oh, I got my fingers on the wrong keys. Romans 15:27. I believe that's what it said. Yeah. It hath pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things. Which makes sense because we want to help each other. We don't want to leave each other out to dry. I mean, if you need food or something to drink, you don't let your brother like starve or go naked. So Hebrews 10:11. And every priest standeth daily, ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. So that's a great one to show you how bankrupt the church system is right there, because it don't take away sins. So that's for itself, is that they're sitting there doing all this work and stuff, and none of it can take away sins. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God, talking about Jesus Christ. So right here, Ia usually means the quality of. So the quality of being a people working for people, which is like Sophia. Sophia means the quality of wisdom. Ia on the end of the word. Sophia with the Ia means the quality of wisdom. Right here, Ia means the quality of being a worker, or being a worker for God or a worker for Satan. So let's see, Luke 1:23. And it came to pass that as soon as the days of his menstruation were accomplished, he departed to his own house. And after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months, saying, okay, so this is talking about Zacharias working in the temple, just like we saw in Hebrews 10 a moment ago. Hebrews 10:11, same context. he was working there, and he was working for God. The temple was built for God, so that's where he was working. 2 Corinthians 9:12. For the administration of this service not only supplieth the want of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgiving unto God. So, loving one another, caring for one another, being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causeth through us thanksgiving to God. For the administration of the service not only supplieth the want of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgiving unto God. Whilst by the experiment of this ministration they glorify God for your professed subjection unto the gospel of Christ, and for your liberal distribution unto them and unto all men, and by their prayer for you, which long after you for the exceeding grace of God in you, thanks be unto God for his unspeakable gift. So it's talking about the gospel here. Now he that ministers the seed to the sower both minister bread for your food and multiply your seed sown, and increase the fruits of righteousness, being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causeth through us thanksgiving to God. So it's talking about the gospel and loving one another and the love exchange and the intercourse of that dialogue of the way that you love Jesus and care for your brothers. Not talking about money. They will turn this into money in a second. But the New Testament money is agape and love, as we see in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's not talking about giving your last dime to someone, but it's talking about helping a brother out if you can. I mean, if it's not in your ability to do so, you can't. Especially when you live in a socially stratified system like capitalism in America. People can't even afford hardly to take care of themselves half the time. But Philippians 2:17. Yea, and I be offered unto the sacrifice and service of your faith. I joy and rejoice over you. Holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Yea, and if I be offered upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I joy and rejoice with you all. For the same cause also do ye joy and rejoice with me. So he's talking about being offered for God. So sacrifice and service of your faith. Let's see. So serving God. It's not talking about serving Satan. So let's see. Philippians 2:30. So just scroll down. Philippians 2:30. Because for the work of Christ he was nigh unto death, not regarding his life, to supply your lack of service toward me. So again, serving. Let's see. And you can see how it would apply, because if you're serving God, you also love your brethren and want the best for them. And we're not talking about giving to a church. We're talking about like, hey, you're calling them, what's up, man? How's things going with like all of your persecution and trials? Because that's definitely what Paul is talking about. Paul's always talking about trials and suffering and how he's been beaten, and that's how the world treats us too. There'd be a lot more of it if it wasn't a police state. Hebrews 8:6. But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. So again, working for God and the way that he works through us. Hebrews 9:21. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. So yeah, the place that was being cleansed. And the tabernacle represents the believer, so he cleanses us with water and blood and spirit. Let me see. Hebrews 1:14. Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? So, but to which of the angels said he at any time, sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool? In the scriptural context, we're angels as well because we're messengers, because we herald the gospel. So, are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? We serve the people who serve God. The two greatest commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and treat your brothers as yourself. So let's see. Liturgy, Romans 13:6. Hey, we were just over there in that area a minute ago, so. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. And it's all briefly comprehended in love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. So that's what we're supposed to do, is love one another. Caesar may come and take our money. They could pass laws that the religious system will take our money, but owe no man anything but to love them. If they're going to force it out of you, they're going to force it out of you. So they already do, right? That I should be the minister of Jesus Christ to the Gentiles, ministering the gospel of God, that the offering up of the Gentiles might be acceptable, being sanctified by the Holy Ghost. So the same thing, serving God and serving our brothers. Philippians 2:25. Yeah, I suppose it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother, and companion in labor, and fellow soldier, but your messenger, and he that ministereth through my wants. So helping me out. He loves God, I love God, we're helping each other out. Hebrews 1:7. And of the angels he saith, who maketh his angels spirits and his ministers a flame of fire. And that's what it says in Jeremiah when it says he'll make it the people wood, and he'll make his word and his mouth a flame in Jeremiah's mouth. So that's exactly what the scriptures say. Let's look at that real quick. My word in your mouth. I'm going to have to Google it. I think it's Jeremiah 5. Jeremiah 5:14. Wherefore thus saith Yahweh, Elohim of hosts, because ye speak this word, behold, I will make my words in thy mouth fire, and this people wood, and it shall devour them. That's good to know. That's what it's talking about over there in Hebrews 1:7. Hebrews 8:2. A minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched, and not man. So our bodies, now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched, and not man. So our bodies are the temple. Our bodies are the mobile tabernacle as they had in the wilderness. That's what that represented, is our body. Let's see. Moving on. All right, so what we're doing here is called an exhaustive word study. So we just went through the places where these words are mentioned, and I covered with you these particular words. And I just learned a lot by doing this with you, because what I learned is that to keep in mind the greatest two commandments is to love your God and to love your brethren. love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and treat your brother as yourself. And that is the true service of the people, though. And that's how we know that the true energy of God is permeating and radiating through, is when we love our brothers as ourselves. And when because we love God and God is working through us because our bodies are the temple. That's what the true mission of the ecclesia is. And so the liturgy of the thing called church, as I asked in the beginning, to keep those two things in separate compartments so you can see and the division that is between them, and to understand that they work for Satan. That is the energy that works through them, as we saw there with the word energy, which is part of that word liturgy. And our ergos is how they say it, and that's where and in ergos is also a Greek word, and that's rendered effectual working. That's one of my favorite verses here. So effectual working, and it actually speaks of how God works through us, given unto me by the effectual working of his power. And then here, according to the effectual working in one moment, let me see. Let me click on this. And I'm going to click on that word energeia. Let me see. Yeah, energeia. So this is the places where it's mentioned. Let's see. Bear with me, please. Okay, right here in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, even him whose working is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. So that one right there is showing you that Satan works through these people who are evil, the spirit, the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh through the children of disobedience. And then in 2 Thessalonians 2:11, and for this cause God shall send them strong delusion that they should believe a lie. So the working of the power of Satan through them. And sorry, right now I can't find the word of where it says that God is. Let me see. So one moment, please. Yeah, so right here, these are speaking of God working through you. And what is the exceeding greatness of his power to usward who believe, according to the working of his mighty power? It's speaking of God working through us. Whereof I was made a minister according to the gift of the grace of God given unto me by the effectual working of his power, from whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working in the measure of every part, making increase of the body into the edifying of itself in love, so as with Christ as his head, who shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto his glorious body, according to the working whereby he is able even to subdue all things unto himself. Whereunto I also labor, striving according to his working, which worketh in me mightily. Worketh in me mightily. And he should be working in us mightily if we believe. And if we believe, it's because of him. Buried with him in baptism, wherein also ye are risen with him through the faith of the operation of God, who hath raised him from the dead. And that's why we suffer outside the camp. That's why we separate. That's why Moses was called out of Egypt and he was brought into the promised land, and they roamed about the desert until all sin was killed off. Every last person was killed off who was a non-believer, the scripture says. It says it in different words than that, but it says all unbelief was gone by the time they went to the promised land. So, and that's the same picture of Abraham leaving Babylon and going to the promised land when he called them into Israel. So, all right, well, we've covered this, and this would be an example of a pretty exhaustive word search, but there's other forms of that word as well, so don't consider this one exhaustive, because I know there's other word forms that are combined together that contain that same word element. So, but I hope that this helps, and we'll look at more as we study and grow together. And all right, thanks for watching. Bye.